I used to be one of those people who really valued their own space. My home was my sanctuary, a little one-bedroom house at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. It was the first place I ever bought, and for 2 years it was perfect. I had my routines: wake up at 6 a.m., coffee, work from 7 until 4, come home, lock the door behind me, and the rest of the world just disappeared. That feeling of turning the key in the lock, that was everything. The sound of the deadbolt sliding home. It meant I was safe. I was alone. And that's how I liked it. The first time it happened, it was so small I almost missed it. I have this old leather armchair, my grandfather's, and I always leave a book on the seat, face down, to mark my page. I came home from work one day, and the book was on the little end table next to the chair, not face down. It was closed, with the bookmark I never use sticking out of the top. I remember just staring at it, thinking, I don't remember doing that, but I must have, right? You forget things, little brain glitches during a busy week. So I picked it up, found my page, and put it back on the chair, face down, the way it was supposed to be. A few days later, I was in the bathroom, brushing my teeth before bed, and I noticed my toothbrush was damp, not soaking wet, just slightly damp near the bristles. But I hadn't used it since that morning, over 12 hours ago. It should have been bone dry. I stood there in my socks on the cold tile, just holding it, feeling the faint moisture on my fingertips. And that's when the first real spike of fear hit me. It wasn't a big, terrifying moment. It was a quiet, creeping wrongness. I told myself it was the humidity in the air, a leaky faucet I hadn't noticed. Anything, any explanation that wasn't the one screaming in the back of my mind. But then the adjustments started happening more often. They were never destructive. Nothing was ever broken. Nothing was ever stolen. That was the weirdest part. It was like someone was living in my house when I wasn't there, and they were just tidying up, to their own preference. I'd come home and the thermostat would be set to 68 degrees. I always keep it at 72. Always. I'd find a coffee mug in the drying rack, a mug I hadn't used that day. Clean, still warm to the touch. My mail, which I always left on the kitchen counter in a messy pile, would be stacked neatly, in a perfect rectangle, next to the toaster. Each time, I felt this wave of nausea, this profound sense of violation. It was a quiet, methodical invasion. Someone was walking through my rooms, touching my things, using my bathroom, sleeping in my bed. I started checking my sheets every single night, looking for a crease that wasn't mine, an indent in the pillow, smelling them for a scent that wasn't me. I felt like I was losing my mind. I called the police once. I remember standing on my porch, the phone shaking in my hand. The dispatcher asked if anything was stolen. I said no. She asked if there were any signs of a break-in, a broken window, a jimmied lock. I said no. There was this long pause on the other end of the line, and then she asked, "Sir, what exactly do you want us to do?" And I didn't have an answer. I just said never mind and hung up. What could they do? Arrest a ghost for adjusting my thermostat? The paranoia got worse. I started leaving little traps. I'd balance a pencil on top of a door, or sprinkle a tiny line of salt on the floor in my closet. I'd come home, my heart pounding in my chest, and I would do a full sweep of the house. Every time the trap would be undisturbed. The pencil would still be there. The salt would be a perfect line. It was maddening. It made me feel like I really was the one going crazy. That I was doing these things myself in some kind of fugue state. The final night, the night I left and never came back, was a Tuesday in October. I had to stay late at work. Something about a server crashing. I didn't get home until almost 10 p.m. The whole drive home I had this pit in my stomach, this feeling of absolute dread. I pulled into my driveway and saw that the lights were off. Just like I left them, everything looked normal, but it didn't feel normal. I unlocked the front door, turned the deadbolt, and the first thing I noticed was the smell. It smelled clean, like lemon-scented cleaner. I never use lemon-scented cleaner. Then I stepped into the living room, and I saw it. On the coffee table was a plate, and on the plate was a half-eaten sandwich. A glass of milk, half full, was sitting next to it. There was condensation on the glass. It was cold. I slowly walked closer. My legs felt like they were made of lead. And propped up against the glass was a little piece of paper, torn from my own notepad. Written in my own pen, there were just 3 words on it. It said, "You are late." My blood turned to ice. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, an accusation, like I had done something wrong, like I had broken a rule by coming home to my own house. And in that moment of pure, frozen shock, I heard it. Upstairs, a single, heavy creak, the sound of a floorboard taking on weight. Someone had been sitting, and now they were standing up. They had heard me come in. They had been waiting, quietly, in the dark. I didn't think. I just ran. I turned and bolted out the front door so fast I almost fell off the porch. I fumbled with my car keys, my hands shaking so badly I could barely fit the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life. I threw the car in reverse tires, screaming on the asphalt, and I flew out of that driveway. As I spun the car around to peel down the street, my headlights washed across the front of the house one last time, and I saw him. In my bedroom window, on the 2nd floor, the light was on now, and a man was standing there. Just a silhouette. He wasn't waving. He wasn't threatening me. He was just watching me run. As if he was disappointed. As if I was the intruder who had just been scared away. I drove all night. I never went back to that town. I left everything I owned in that house. Let the bank take it. I don't care. Because sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night in my new apartment 3 states away, and I can still see that silhouette in the window. And I know that house was never my sanctuary. It was just a place I was allowed to borrow, and my lease was up.